I think what Jerry Brownlee has forgotten to talk about is actually who else is involved in the fight. So you've got over 100,000 troops on the ground in the Mosul assault. He says about 12,000 of them are from the Iraqi army. Those are some of the soldiers who we've been involved in training.
Well, he said that 12,000 were the Australian and New Zealand trained ones.
And then you've got a whole heap of others. The most important fighting force is the Counter-Terrorism Service, which is an Iraqi unit, an elite unit. We've had nothing to do with their training, and they've been on the job, for years, and they do a very good job. They lead the assaults as they did on Fallujah, as they have in every city that's been retaken off ISIS. Then you've got huge numbers of people in the various militias, the Sunni militias, the Shia militias, which are the biggest, and the Kurdish Peshmerga. That's roughly 90,000 troops just involved in that grouping alone. So the real effort, the really heavy lifting that's been happening in Mosul in the last week or so has actually been done by forces other than the Iraqi army.
So are you saying that the Iraqi army has had nothing to do with the successes? You'd have to put it this way. I look to the State Department's Brett McGurk, who was quoted in Foreign Policy magazine, saying that ISIS has lost 47% of the territory it previously controlled in Iraq. Now, that's pretty significant. Are you really saying that the Iraqi army has had nothing to do with that success?
That's hugely significant and a great success, and good on everybody involved in it. But let's not kid ourselves. The Iraqi army was hopelessly organised, poorly led. A year ago, they are still hopelessly organised and poorly led. Slightly better training. When I was up there in April, we were told there's one of the Iraqi battalions there. Half of them turned up to the training. That's the mentality that they have. The officers weren't there, then the troops didn't turn up. That was April this year. That is not a force that is capable of leading a major assault to eradicate ISIS from a big city like Mosul.
Well, how do you explain that then? How do you explain these successes? Are you really saying it's all down to the Peshmerga and some of the counter-terrorism people? That the Iraqi army, which
they're not some people. They're not some people. These are elite troops that are, they know the job. They are like the special forces that you see from the US, Britain, and other places. They are not the Iraqi army. Counter-terrorism service in Iraq has a completely different and separate command structure from the Iraqi army. They are not the Iraqi army. Then you've got all these militias, and the one thing they did agree to was some coordination, so everybody was there at the same time. But once the assault was underway, once the conflict was underway, they go off and do their own thing. And actually the difficulty that the Iraqi generals are having right now is making sure that they're getting all the bases covered as the assault progresses.
You said when we spoke in June about this that the role of the New Zealanders there was redundant. Do you stand by that?
What our troops up there have done in a training role has been fantastic. I've seen it. Jerry Brown is absolutely right.
So were you wrong to say they shouldn't go then?
No, I wasn't wrong at all. The contribution that the Iraqi army is making to the security of Iraq is they are a bit player. It is a small part. Jerry Brownlee is right that the next phase is actually going to be most important. And when we met with the Minister of Defence from Iraq, he was very clear. The biggest need they will have after Mosul will be the civil reconstruction and the peace and good order internally in Iraq. And that's going to need other training. That's why the government has already changed the training mandate to one from the Iraqi army to the Iraqi Federal Police Force.
This deployment was, of course, extended by 18 months. That was back in mid-year in June. You were reported at the time as saying if you were elected Prime Minister, you would pull the troops out, although when we spoke you weren't quite so definitive. Can you say now whether you would pull the troops out of the training role or not?
There's a commitment made now. If I were making the decision back in June, I wouldn't have extended the mission.
But if you were
if there is a new mission, as Jerry Brownlee now seems to be indicating, of contributing to civil reconstruction and peace and order, and internal peace and order, there may well be something useful we can contribute to that. But continuing to invest more and more training in the Iraqi army isn't going to yield a great deal of fruit for us. It hasn't contributed a great deal to the security of Iraq and the retaking of Mosul.
Just to get that clear, you wouldn't cut short the operation should you win election at the end of next year?
The commitment has been made. I certainly won't be renewing any training mission with the Iraqi army. Certainly wouldn't do that. If there is useful stuff we can do in terms of civil reconstruction, absolutely, I think we should be involved in looking at that.
Just quickly, while you're here, the government has been considering whether to fund the boxing fight with Joseph Parker getting that big bout over here. What's your view? Should public money go into that?
it's not something I'd leap to and say, yeah, we should do it. It's a bit different to, for example, the America's Cup and the Cricket World Cup and the Rugby World Cup, where you've got tournaments that last several weeks. People come down here, travel, they spend money, all the rest of it. A one-off event on one evening somewhere in New Zealand isn't going to have the same economic benefit as those other tournaments. I would be more reluctant to contribute to a boxing match than I would those other tournaments.